Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question, that's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and wanted to have an open discussion.
My name's Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Wow, Brexit betrayals and rearming the Argentinians so that they can invade the Falklands again. It's an eclectic mix on the front of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, or indeed this morning's newspaper front pages here in Britain. But let's take you over to America now, where there's exciting stuff happening, unless you happen to be on a boat in Venezuela, Bev.
Thank you, Patrick. Yep, good to see you. And one of the stories on the front page of the paper tonight, of course, is Sharon Davis. Just fiddling with my pack there. Sharon Davis, who is going to be sitting in the House of Lords, and we are delighted about that. I spoke to her this afternoon, Patrick, to get the first response. Don't you think? What do you think? It's just so satisfying that somebody's worked so hard gets rewarded.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also just, like, done so much and taken so much abuse for just stating the bleeding obvious, sticking their head above the parapet. And apart from that, obviously, everything that she's done in the world of sport previously, you know, just fantastic, really. You know, completely vindicated. And she'll be a powerful, strident voice, which is exactly what we need.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. We'll have a few more of those on the show tonight, Patrick. Thank you so much. This is The Late Show Live. I'm Bev Turner on The Late Show Live tonight.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large.
This has broken within the past few hours. America has seized a tanker off the coast of Venezuela, marking a further escalation in tension between the two countries. Also tonight.
I can announce today that I have commissioned new research from UK Research and Innovation to rectify the unacceptable gaps in our understanding of perpetrators' backgrounds and motivations, including their ethnicity and religion.
This is also breaking this evening. It's a staggering admission from senior police chiefs who admit they will never be able to record 100% of offenders' ethnicities. Why would that be so complicated? Also,
we are so badly going in the wrong direction, and yet here we are bringing down barriers to safeguarding every single day.
As well as her peerage, I also spoke to Sharon Davis this afternoon about the fact that women and girls in Britain are being sexually assaulted and even raped in mixed changing rooms in council-run leisure centres all across the country. Plus,
It is not now sensible to unravel what is effectively the best deal with the US that any country has got.
It was a hot topic in Prime Minister's questions today. Is it time to sacrifice Britain's deal with America and cosy back up to the EU? We're going to be cracking open tomorrow's front pages hours before the ink is dry. Breaking the news before it becomes news. We are live, of course, in Washington, D.C. Just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about and that matter to Britain too, including this.
We want safety, we want security, we want to make sure we're not letting the wrong people come.
This is a controversial one. All tourists, including those from Britain, will have to undergo a social media screening before being allowed entry into America. How do you feel about that? On a similar note,
we as a whole will have our constitutional right taken away from us. We won't be able to share our views or opinions, and we won't be able to hear others' views and opinions.
this is another controversial one to get stuck into tonight. It's a world first. Australia has enacted a social media ban for all users aged under 16. But is it the right move? We're going to talk to a couple of people in Australia. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Let's get our night started. So let's start with that breaking news developing within just the last few hours. The United States has intercepted and seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening.
So it's the latest and most dramatic escalation yet from the White House, which has spent months tightening the screws on Nicolas Maduro, accusing the Venezuelan leader of running a state-backed narco-trafficking empire right under America's nose. It also comes just days after President Trump openly suggested that the US could take action on Venezuelan soil. But the Maduro regime insists that this is all part of a US plot to topple him, accusing America of trying to engineer a removal. Let's talk to my panel about this evening. I'm delighted to say that I am joined by former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, and Ashley Brassfield, reporter for The Daily Caller. Thank you both so much for coming in. Niall, for those people who think they've got deja vu, you were here last night. We were on air for about 5 minutes, and then President Trump spoke for an hour and 50 minutes. So we thought we'd have you back.
Relatively short speech by the President.
It really was. So thank you for coming back in. We're interested to hear what you've got to say. But Ashley, let me start with you as our American. Why is this situation in Venezuela relevant? We were talking off air, weren't we, about the fact that it can feel, we know this is important, it can feel like it's certainly a long way from the UK, and it might feel quite a long way from Americans as well, but what's happening here?
Yeah, I think this does hit a little closer to home, unlike conflicts in the Middle East that we've seen over the past 20 years. But in this case, we've seen a huge focus on the narco-terrorists from the administration, and now we have a situation with a cargo ship being seized. It has not been revealed yet who owns that cargo ship at this point. They have not revealed that yet, and I think the president didn't even give a reason for the seizure at this point. But I mean, I do think there is questions that a lot of journalists are continuing to ask about our involvement with Venezuela. Venezuela particularly having tons of oil. I think that's an interest to the entire world and the market itself. But just a lot of questions here regarding narco-terrorists, regarding Nicolas Maduro, the communist leader of the country, and whether he will be in control. And I think President Trump has had many conversations, and they're continuing to have a plan going forward, saying, he's not going to last very long in the country.
And of course, Niall, it appeared that these strikes on these Venezuelan drug trafficking boats were precisely that. It was clamping down on narco-terrorists. This is not that. So what is happening here? These pictures that we're watching here of America seizing this boat, is this a proxy war on China?
Yeah, so this is really about sanctions busting, really, because the Venezuelan regime, of course, is illegally exporting oil, and it ends up in China. And so the United States basically is enforcing the sanctions that are in place. This is a very impressive military operation. It's American exceptionalism writ large here, and 3 cheers to President Trump, I think, for launching this kind of raid. We can't imagine, for example, Keir Starmer doing something like this.
No.
And so this is the United States, the world superpower, flexing its muscles on the world stage against a vicious, brutal communist tyrant. And that's a great thing to see the United States actually taking action here. The United States really is standing up, I think, to one of the most odious regimes on the face of the earth. And if Maduro actually ends up being thrown out of office as a result of the US action, great. He's a dictator and a tyrant. And I think the Venezuelan people will be glad to see the back of Maduro.
But when you say that they're illegally selling oil to China, illegal on what basis?
Well, so Venezuela is actually acting in conjunction with the Iranian regime. And so this actually goes around sanctions that are in place against Iran.
Right.
The oil ends up actually in China. And so it generates money for the Iranian regime. So this is really at the heart of what this is all about.
Okay, so there's always something going on behind the scenes, really, isn't it? So nothing is ever as it appears, actually. Yes. Exactly. But will American people be comfortable with President Trump doing this? You know, should he be trying to enact regime change in Venezuela?
Yeah, I think that's the question. I think a lot of Generation Z who, you know, we've heard America First across the board, and I think there is a separation with MAGA and America First, and there's a definition, kind of war going on within the conservative movement about what that actually is, you know, what interest we have in obtaining oil from that country, going in, destroying narco-terrorists. There is questions, I think, around the narco-terrorists itself. But to answer the question, I think, you know, there is questions. I think the American people need some answers on this raid and what problems, I guess, it faces domestically. I think the narco-terrorist aspect, people see that. Thousands of people being killed due to fentanyl overdoses across the country. I know in the past that cocaine's been a major drug. Of course, that can be laced with fentanyl. A lot of it's originating from places like Colombia is what they're alleging, which also has a Chinese influence here, as well as the oil aspect.
Well, let's have a look. In the last few moments, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has said the US executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. For multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organisations. So it's an issue, therefore, of national security. This is intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is vital. And, of course, the Iranian regime is the world's biggest state sponsor of terror. And so Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, China, I mean, they're all part of a broader axis of totalitarian nations, actually. And so it's right that the United States is taking this kind of action. This is American leadership on the world stage, where no one else in the world actually does anything at all. And I'm grateful to see this kind of leadership. I think most American people will support the action being taken by the president. They don't want to see a weak-kneed leader like Joe Biden or Obama bowing to dictators and tyrants. Actually, this is real strength and leadership. We need to see more of this, actually.
Is this going to ramp up, Ashley, do you think? I know it's a bit of a difficult question to answer at this time, but what happens next?
I mean, I think this alone was a ramp up in a lot of ways. You know, the drone strikes on terrorists were one thing. This is a new, of course, from what we saw today, and it's a developing story, of course. But I do think we're going to see it ramp up. I mean, I think there's been a little bit of warning signs from the president in recent days and things he said in interviews. And, you know, he's kind of had some discretion what he's been able to say and not say regarding talks with Maduro himself. But, I mean, we have here, you know, he was very focused on energy. I think opening the markets to a place like Venezuela that's been closed off in the oil industry for many years is one thing. But even in the Caribbean islands, which has a massive former British influence, I think is another aspect of this that is going to be impacted in a lot of ways.
Okay, super. Let me know what you think at home, gbnews.com/your say. Would you like to see our government taking such drastic action? I'm not sure what the equivalent would be, Niall. I don't know what the equivalent would be.
Taking action against the French.
Taking action against the French. Yeah, dealing with the dinghies. We can't even deal with the dinghies. Look what he can deal with.
Yes,
right.
Actually.
Moving on. Also breaking tonight, it's a staggering confession from Britain's policing establishment. It's a warning. This conversation may be distressing to some viewers and listeners because GB News can tonight reveal that senior policing figures have admitted that they will never be able to record 100% of offenders' ethnicities. Why would that be? That's despite the Home Secretary's pledge to start collecting ethnicity data to combat conspiracy theories, she says, around grooming gangs. Conspiracy theories is an interesting phrase to use. Tell that to Rotherham, to Telford, to Rochdale. Tell that to the thousands of British girls that were raped, beaten, trafficked and ignored because authorities were too cowardly to confront the truth staring them in the face. We know the pattern. We've reported it for years. Predominantly Pakistani male rape gangs targeting vulnerable white working class girls. That is not a conspiracy theory. It is a national scandal and which this channel has worked hard to highlight for years. Even the Home Secretary herself has acknowledged that ethnicity may have played a role.
It will consider explicitly the background of offenders, including their ethnicity and religion, and whether the authorities failed to properly investigate what happened out of a misplaced desire to protect community cohesion.
A misplaced desire to protect community cohesion. Translation: officials don't want to be called racist. This is why tonight's admission is so outrageous. How do you protect children when you can't even record who is abusing them?
Children were submitted to beatings and gang rapes. Many contracted sexually transmitted infections. Some were forced to have abortions. Others had their children taken from them. But it was not just these awful crimes that now shame us. There was also an abject failure by the state in its many forms to fulfill its most basic duty, protecting the young and vulnerable. Worse still, some in positions of power turned a blind eye to the horror, even covered it up.
Within the past few minutes, newly released data reveals that nearly 123,000 child sexual abuse and exploitation offences were recorded last year. 123,000. Group-based offending, that's the category that includes grooming gangs, made up 17% of all cases. That was last year, 17%. This is still happening right now. But ethnicity that was recorded for just 34% of victims and perpetrators. Why? Well, because police forces use self-defined ethnicity, which allows some perpetrators not to engage. Well, with me now is former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley, a man of huge experience and a huge dose of common sense. Peter, how difficult would it be to write down on a piece of paper what somebody's ethnicity is if they won't tell you themselves?
Sure that you and I and your audience think that it would be quite a straightforward process. But we have a problem here with senior police leaders in the UK, and that is sometimes they are unwilling to record the ethnicity. And of course, this showed itself so very clearly during the child rape gang scandals that continue to blight this country. They didn't want to go anywhere near the race issue. It's why so many of them turned the other way and said there's nothing to see here, allowing young, vulnerable children to be continually raped, kidnapped, plied with drugs and alcohol, and all the other hideous offending that went on with that. They're also, in some circumstances, going to be unable to record ethnicity of offenders because, of course, not everybody gets caught for a crime. So in those circumstances, the ethnicity might not be clear. There is, however, a simple solution. There's a very simple solution. Government needs to pass a law to force the police to record on every possible occasion the ethnicity of offenders. Make it the law, they'll have to do it, and then the picture will become much clearer.
Is there a different way of doing it though, Peter? Because it's not necessarily about ethnicity and such. It's not about the amount of melanin you have in your skin, really. It's about your cultural background, isn't it? Because you could be a melanated person, having grown up in Devon, and not have any sort of cultural baggage that you might bring to looking at white girls and saying they deserve to be raped. So is there some other way that this could be recorded which isn't just about skin colour?
Yeah, racial, cultural and ethnic. Pass the law, make them record all that data where they can. Now, there will be sensitivities, and of course, certain people who get arrested for these crimes will no doubt have very smart lawyers that will say to them, you do not have to provide this information if people can wriggle out of it, for example. So it needs to be put onto the statute book, passed by law. in government. If you get arrested for any crime, we need it for any crime, not only sexual offences. It will help the police, actually, because when they know who's committing a particular type of crime, what community is committing a particular type of crime, they will be able to deploy their resources accordingly in a targeted way to try and tackle those crimes. It's really very simple. Make it law, make them do it, make offenders pass over that information, and let's go catching those people who are committing those crimes.
Yeah, OK, Peter, thank you so much. Former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley there. On the issue of the National Inquiry into grooming gangs, a Labour Party spokesman has previously said the inquiry will explicitly examine the background, ethnicity and culture of offenders, adding that they are committed to uncovering the truth. And the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has also stated that she's commissioned new research to rectify the unacceptable gaps in our understanding of perpetrators' backgrounds and motivations, including their ethnicity and religion. While the Home Secretary does not currently have the power to mandate that this is collected, I will rectify this by legislating at the earliest possible opportunity. Let me ask my panel just very briefly, does it matter, Niall, the ethnicity, the culture, the religion of criminals?
I think it does, because if you look at the grooming gangs, the vast majority, I think more than 90%, are men of Pakistani origin, Muslims. And they are overwhelmingly the perpetrators of horrific crime. So yes, ethnicity and religion matters, and it should be logged and tracked here. I'm amazed that the Home Secretary isn't accepting the reality here, and I think also, as I mentioned an earlier show, those responsible for the grooming gangs, and they should be given the death penalty, really. And
Ashley, is ethnicity recorded in this country? Do we even know? It's a very tricky subject, isn't it?
It is a tricky subject, and you know the biggest comparison I can make is to Minnesota with the Somali immigrants, and we've recently had issues with social services being abused, money being sent back to international terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab that have connections to Al-Qaeda, going back to Black Hawk Down that happened in the 90s. So yes, I think there is a issue here. We have to get beyond the political correctness and talk about the assimilation process, specifically for people, you know, of Muslim faith, with Sharia law overtakes certain countries' law, like the Constitution of the United States and all that. So it is a politically correct conversation that needs to be, you know, swept away and say, let's have a real conversation about this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who would not be in favour of it.
Well, I think those who are excusing the activities of some monstrously evil people, frankly.
It is evil.
Yeah. OK, let me know what you think at home. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
We want safety, we want security, we want to make sure we're not letting the wrong people come.
So this is a tricky one. Are you planning a trip to the US anytime soon? Well, you could be asked to submit your social media posts to be checked. Is it a wise idea or a step too far? First of all, though.
It is not now sensible to unravel what is effectively the best deal with the US that any country has got.
Britain ditch its trade deal with America and seek closer ties with the European Union. I think I know your answers to that question, but do let me know. gbnews.com/your say. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are so badly going in the wrong direction, and yet here we are bringing down barriers to safeguarding every single day.
That is the fantastic Sharon Davis. She may soon take a seat in the House of Lords. She's going to, we're going to show you. She spoke to me a little earlier about how mixed-sex changing rooms are putting women and girls in genuine statistical danger. First of all, though, a war of words erupted in the House of Commons today between Liberal Democrat leader Sebastian Davis and the Prime Minister over Donald Trump's involvement in UK democracy.
If we're going to stand up to President Trump, we do need to strengthen our ties with Europe. This government will not succeed unless it gets our economy growing strongly again. And the best way to do that is a customs union with Europe.
And yes, I do want a closer relationship than the one we've got at the moment. We are moving towards that. We do have manifesto commitments on issues such as single market, customs union and freedom of movement. But I would gently point this out, that having now done significant trade deals with other countries, including the US and India, which are hugely important to the JLR workforce and on pharma, it is not now sensible to unravel what is effectively the best deal with the US that any country has got.
Ed Davey. I mean, come on. 13 Labour MPs have also expressed their support for a Liberal Democrat proposal that would require the government to start talks on forming a tailored customs union with the EU. Meanwhile, Elon Musk has also waded in on the issue of the EU, calling for it to be disbanded and hitting out at a system of rule by bureaucracy, not democracy. I like that. The Late Show Live wants to hear from you tonight. We are asking, would closer ties with the EU be more beneficial than closer ties to America? You can take part in that by scanning the QR code, which is going to pop up on your screen any minute now. Get your phones ready, get your cameras ready. Here comes the QR code. Go. It's not working. We will make it work. There's always something. We will bring it to you, don't you worry. You can get on the Your Say and let me know your thoughts anyway. I'm going to bring you those results throughout the show. Let's get the take of Joe Megan, Public Affairs Manager. There we go. There's your little QR code. Would closer ties with the EU be more beneficial than the US? Yes or no? Who do you feel closer to in 2025? Do you feel closer to America and the politics here, or the EU and the politics there? So let's talk now to Joe Megan, who is the Public Affairs Manager at the European Movement UK, and also my panel here in Washington, DC, former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, and Ashley Brassfield, reporter for the Daily Caller. So let's start with you then, Joe. Should we be cozying back up to the EU at the expense of our relationship with the great United States of America?
Thanks for having me on, Beverly. And yes, it's simple. This is geography matters and trade. This is an economic argument. It's not a political argument. We do twice the amount of trade with the EU as we do with the US. It's just a numbers game we can't ignore. Nearly half of all UK imports come from Europe. The frictionless supply chain that we have is important across every industry of the UK.
But I have to say, and this isn't a sentence you hear me say very often, Joe, Starmer was right when he said we actually have a very good trade deal with America now.
Saying we have a very good trade deal with America does not make it a better trade deal than one we could possibly have with Europe. If we look at an American trade deal, even if we had the best possible trade deal imagined by economists, the prediction is it would be about 0.25% benefit to the UK economy, to the GDP. Whereas if you look at new research from over in the States, from the NBER, has predicted a closer relationship with the EU would give us a 6 to 8% boost to the UK economy.
Now, Gardner, let me ask you, it's almost like all those people who voted for Brexit were irrelevant when you hear Ed Davies standing up in the House of Commons, isn't it? Go on, your take on this.
Well, exactly. I first of all can't wait to see Ed Davies, the sort of circus clown of Parliament, in a boxing match with Donald Trump. I think we know exactly who will win that contest. And as for this idea of overturning the democratically expressed will of 17.4 million Britons in the 2016 Brexit referendum, I think it's absolutely disgraceful. This is a political move, of course, by the Lib Dems and their Labour allies, and this really is fundamentally anti-democratic. Why doesn't the EU just remove all of their tariff barriers against the UK, and then we can see a fundamentally good trade deal with the European Union? But the EU is protectionist, is full of spite. It hates, of course, Brexit because they fear democracy, self-determination. They won't allow, of course, Brexit-style votes across the European Union because they fear democracy and freedom. And as Elon Musk was saying earlier this week, the European Union operates in an incredibly tyrannical, despotic fashion. And Elon Musk called for the abolition of the EU, which I 100% agree with, because the EU does not represent in any way democracy or freedom or sovereignty or self-determination. So this move by the Lib Dems, I think, is an absolute disgrace. It's an insult to all of those who voted to throw off the shackles of the European Union in the Brexit referendum. Democracy should be respected.
Actually, before I just bring you in, I just want to go back briefly to Joe. Just your response to that pretty excoriating attack there from Niall on the EU.
Yes, it was a pretty excoriating attack, and I mean his talks of democracy. But I did not hear one thing in that said that being closer to the US would be more beneficial to the UK than being closer to Europe, economically or trade-wise. Well, I'd be very happy to hear that, because I wasn't sure if anyone else heard it.
Go on, Niall. So what did he miss there then?
Yeah, so of course a US-UK trade deal is going to be tremendously beneficial for both sides of the Atlantic, actually. This is an example of a trade deal between self-governing nation states, as opposed to doing a deal with a supranational European Union. And this is the right way to move forward. Two sovereign nations negotiating a trade deal that works to the interests of both sides. And yes, it's going to create jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. It's a great deal for Britain. It's a great deal for the United States. The European Union, of course, believes in protectionism, protectionist barriers, and is applying all sorts of tariffs against the British people. And in what way is that actually positive for the UK? The UK should be fighting for the EU to throw off their tariffs against the British people. So we see a lot of nastiness, vindictiveness from the unelected bureaucrats of the European Commission sitting in Brussels. So the pressure should be applied on them, actually. If they're really interested in free trade, they should be throwing off all of their protectionist devices that they're using against the British people, actually.
Let me ask Ashley, you hear the President talk regularly about his relationship with the UK and how much he loves the UK. Do you think we can get more out of our relationship with this particular President?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, you saw this, he came to the UK on 2 state visits over the last year, so I think you show how much they care. Keir Starmer always willing to meet with him, but I think that also shows the UK is willing to meet at any time to talk about this. And when it comes to the EU side, I think they should take notes on it. I think it's a negotiation always, and the UK made a decision in 2016 for Brexit, and you have to, find ways in order to do so. I think it is a beneficial trade with the US, specifically in the technology standpoint. But I mean, with the president and what he's done and how he goes forward with negotiations, I think they could all take a note from that.
Joe, do you look further down the line and think, this is probably the most British-friendly president that we've had and we may ever have? He has a sentimental attachment to our country because his mother is from Scotland, but maybe you think that the politicians should be looking beyond this administration and therefore the relationship with the EU needs to be repaired now for the future?
I mean, you say this is the most sort of pro-UK president, but I mean, he did bring in tariffs against the UK, and we still are paying tariffs compared to what we did in the previous regime under Biden. So I'm not sure that economically that is fact, that we are getting the best deal we've ever had out of the US president, if it's worse than the deal we had from the previous president.
I guess we have a better deal than other countries, though. We have more favourable terms than some other countries. But let me just ask you about the idea that the people that voted for Brexit were wrong. Is it just that Brexit hasn't been executed properly for the likes of Ed Davey?
I never said people who voted for Brexit were wrong. I mean, Brexit was a vote that happened in 2016 with everything that's gone on. What I'm looking at is looking forward now about how do we improve the British economy, how do we improve growth, and one of the obvious ways of doing that is moving closer to the EU. We've had COVID, we've had war on the European continent. I mean, things happen. In politics, a week is a long time, as we all know, and we've had nearly 10 long years since that vote. We're looking to make positive changes now, and one of the most obvious ones is to move closer to the European Union to improve our economy and drive growth.
OK, all right, thank you so much. That is Joe Megan there, Public Affairs Manager at the European Movement UK. And as I said, we want to hear from you on this at home. Would closer ties to the EU be more beneficial than the US? So we're going to bring you the results of that poll at the end of the evening. But so far, 3% of you say, yes, we should be closer to the EU, and 97% of you say, no, we should be closer to America. Coming up on The Late Show Live.
We want safety, we want security, we want to make sure we're not letting the wrong people come.
America is set to enforce tougher visa requirements, requiring all tourists to have their social media reviewed. But is this measure a step too far? What does it say for free speech? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice
first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversations.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. So America is planning to review tourists' social media accounts before granting them entry into the country. Under the proposal, foreign tourists, including Brits, would need to provide their social media from the last 5 years. But are these new social media checks fair or authoritarian? I am joined now by GB News contributor, the legendary Neil Oliver. Neil, depending on the administration who is in power at any given time, you and I would not be allowed in this country under certain presidents if they go through our social media. So what do you make of it?
It's hard not to laugh about it. You know, in that way that sometimes situations are just so ludicrous or indeed so dark that gallows humour is all that's left to you. You just have to kind of laugh while the wheel turns. I wonder, on the one hand, is someone just flying a kite? You know, is this just another part of the kind of ongoing psyop to see, you know, if we say this, if we say we're going to do this, what is the reaction going to be? I wonder to the extent to which it's just like a kind of wet finger stuck in the air to see what happens. But there's no getting away from the fact that if this was to come to pass, this is how you stop people travelling without explicitly saying that people can't travel. You know, if a state like the United States of America says, yeah, sure, you can come, jump on a plane, by all means. However, you have to hand over 5 years of your privacy. You know, you have to provide us with all the emails and telephone numbers that you've been in contact with over the last 5 years. But as long as you're prepared to do that, yes, you can come for your 2 weeks holiday in Florida. You know, this is the damping down of people's interest in moving around. And I find it very interesting that on the one hand, you know, from Donald Trump down through J.D. Vance, things that they've said in recent months, you know, where they've vented spleen about the plight of Britain and the plight of people living in Europe and creeping totalitarianism and threats to freedom of speech and all of the rest of it. Well, you know, pot calling the kettle black, I would say. It would appear that the United States of America is being every bit as oppressive and repressive. You know, they're already either deporting or threatening to deport people depending on what they've said and opinions that they've had. And now this. This is, you know, on the one hand, you know, they like to stand and say that they're appalled and clutching at their pearls because of what's happening in Britain and Europe. And then this. You know, there's hypocrisy woven through it along with everything else.
The bit that troubles me as well, Neil, is that if you genuinely had hatred towards America and you wanted to come over here and be a terrorist, which is, of course, the auspices under which this is being pushed through, you probably wouldn't go on Twitter and denounce your violent intent if you were applying for a visa. So it makes a mockery, and yet again, it's another example of the innocent being drawn into this net on behalf of the potentially guilty.
Yeah, this is what I mean about it. It'll just generally discourage people from moving. First of all, it's, oh, well, let's maybe not go to the United States of America because of that. But then if one nation state after another rolls this out, then although people are ostensibly free to go where they want, they'll be less and less inclined to do so. And yes, absolutely, it'll be the same kind of ridiculous situation where people that take part in the gang rape of children in Britain face lesser sentences, if any sentences at all, than those that that have the temerity to put something whatever distasteful on social media, or on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It's going to happen to the usual people. But then you raise a good point. Exactly what are they floating here? What are they suggesting? Opinions about whom? Opinions about what are going to be the kinds of things that are going to put a black mark against your name? Is it something as obvious as I've said things about Donald Trump, and indeed I said things about Joe Biden and Barack Obama, and all the way back Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and George Bush, all the way back. I've said things over the years about all of that. Is that really what they're about? Or is it floating the idea that there are other things that that you might be thinking about thinking? God forbid you might even have put a post about it on social media in the last 5 years to to someone or anyone. So it does beg the question: is it as obvious as somebody taking a pop at the Stars and Stripes or the national anthem, or having an outspoken opinion about Donald Trump, or is it about something else? That's what interests me.
Yeah. Absolutely. I also wanted to talk to you about the Australian social media ban for the under-16s, but we can't do it, Neil. We've run out of time, but maybe you and I should go on YouTube for GB News and have a big long chat about that at some point later this week, my friend. So good to see you.
We need an hour, Beverly.
There. We need an hour. I'll give you an hour any time, Neil. Right, still to come on The Late Show Live.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large.
The United States has made a major escalation in its war against Venezuela today. It could soon see it turn into a major conflict, also tonight.
We can draw a line under the strikes, we can end the disruption, we can rebuild our relationship with doctors as we rebuild the NHS.
He'd like to be the Prime Minister. That's Health Secretary Wes Streeting. Well, he's capitulated to the striking doctors. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. Niall Gardner and I are having a bit of a British moment, aren't we, Niall?
Yes, we are.
We got them to make us both a lovely cup of tea.
Much needed, but we are missing the chocolate digestive biscuits, but they are on the way, apparently.
Oh, don't tell Andrew Pearce. Him and I used to share a digestive biscuit. So, no, not an actual biscuit, but we'd share a packet of biscuits
being
most
flown
mornings.
in as we speak.
Yeah. If you're watching Andrew Pearce, send the digestives. Right, let's delve into the main stories in the front of tomorrow's newspapers with GB News contributor in London, Steve N. Allen, and my panel here, former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner and Ashley Brassfield from the Daily Caller. Steve Allen, how are you? Are you there, my friend?
I will point out, we don't get tea here. I'm sat around with no tea, and you've got all the tea suppliers over in America for some reason. I think, isn't that what kicked off the big war in the first place? Dumping some tea somewhere.
Don't mention the tea. Although, can I just tell you, what you do have at home in London is kettles that actually boil within the space of 15 minutes, because the Americans can't get kettles that work. They don't really have kettles. It's all coffee machines. If you do find a kettle, you have to put it on the night before you go to sleep, but it might be boiled in time for a cup of tea in the morning. Right, Steve, let's look at the front pages of the paper. You've got proper voltage, exactly. Yep. Right, let's have a look at the front page of the papers. What do you want to talk about, Steve? It's a mixed bunch this morning, isn't it, on the front pages there in the UK? What's caught your eye?
A couple of different newspapers go with it, but the Times has it as one of their main stories, the deal to try and avoid the doctors' strike. Interesting, because we don't have loads of detail on it at the moment. West Streeting's got a new offer. We're all hoping he's not doing a bit of a West Streeting like he did last time, where the offer was thoroughly capitulating and not even getting a promise not to strike again, which would have been handy. But anyway, we are where we are. This new offer doesn't have any cash involved. Interesting. He's put down a pledge to have more places for early career doctors to train in their specialism, which, given that they're after a 26% pay rise, if he can negotiate down to that, it will be impressive. It would actually be beneficial as well, because it means you'd have more specialists in this country. You'd need to recruit fewer from abroad, and there's that moral issue about should you be taking the best doctors from other countries to come over here and work when those countries may well need them. Fascinating to see if it works. I tried to just do a little bit of research into the BMA to see how many of their members are early career doctors, because I guess if you're not one, you wouldn't care for this offer. But there's no details on that. I've just looked online. But yeah, it's going to be put in front of the union's going to put it in front of the doctors, and this could avoid the strike just in time for things to get a bit nasty around winter. It would be great.
Oh God, it would be good. Right, let's have a quick look at. Should we look at the front page of the Daily Mail? Stop Labour's grotesque puberty drug experiment on children. Now, it feels like on this issue of transitioning children with the aid of puberty blockers, it feels like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, doesn't it? We had the Casey report was great. We had the Supreme Court definition of what a woman is. And now we're still hearing that there's going to be a trial of puberty blockers for drugs on more than 200 children. So what's this latest headline on it? Steve, on the front page of the Mail.
Yeah, it kind of feels like this is actually what we should have seen coming from the Cass report, because the Cass report was saying there's no good data on this. That good medicine is if you don't have any data showing you that it's beneficial, then you shouldn't do it. Why have an intervention if there's no evidence telling you it's good or bad? And this is basically the next step of them saying, oh, let's go get some data on this then. I've not really seen any good reason as to why we should be doing this research, but it feels like that was the question raised by the Cass report, and now it's being answered. And that's so in some sense we should have seen this coming.
Yeah, actually, it's a huge area in America, actually. It's the biggest growth area in medicine, is transitioning people from being one set agenda to another. When you look across at the UK and you realise that we are still experimenting on children with puberty blockers, what's your assessment of that?
Yeah, it's very sad to me. I'm a former Division I beach volleyball athlete myself, so things like the incidents happening in the UK currently with the rape gangs, girls' bathrooms, men coming into them, it's a big factor to me, and it's a no on all ends. You know, parents stepping in and, you know, allowing this to happen in these places, or doctors even saying that this is, you know, going to prevent, you know, this long-term thing, where we've had victims in the US come out and have detransitioned and talked about, you know, this was reaffirmed to them and this was a bad idea, and they regret what they did because, well, guess what? They didn't have fully developed brains at the time they were children, and their parents didn't step in to say, you know what, maybe this isn't the best idea and this isn't the solution long term. So I'm totally against this. I think a lot of the, you know, normal people with common sense in the US, and that's why President Trump mainly won the election here. And
we're going to talk to Sharon Davis. I did talk to Sharon Davis. I'll show you that interview a little while later in the show, because she's just received a seat in the House of Lords, Niall, because of her work in this area, and thank goodness for people like her, because it feels like there are so many bad actors in this story that are just ready to abuse children.
Yeah, Sharon Davis is a very courageous woman, and I think it's great to have her in the House of Lords now, and we need more people like her with that kind of leadership, standing up, frankly, to, you know, barbarism and savagery, which is what this is actually. You know, the transitioning of children, it is barbaric. And no nation in the world should be promoting this. And it's shocking, of course, to see the Labour government actually advancing this kind of agenda.
Yeah.
And so we're grateful for figures like Sharon Davis, who really stand up to what is real evil.
It does feel, Steve, doesn't it, as though there are such strong forces behind the scenes pushing this through. Just 5 seconds, Steve.
Yeah, it's another one of those topics where it feels like you can't even have the debate, the discussion, because one side of it is thoroughly vilified, as if you shouldn't even get to say it out loud. Well, you can't progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's have a quick look at the weather back.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. A dry day with sunny spells for many eastern areas. However, further west, rain will move in, and across the north, still another fairly breezy day, though not as windy as it was earlier on this week. So some cloud around across many eastern and northern areas, but there will be some sunny spells, particularly across eastern areas of England throughout this morning and into the afternoon. But further west, cloud will thicken after a fairly bright start. It's quite a brisk breeze as well, starting to pick up, and rain will push into parts of northwest Scotland, far west of Wales, southwestern England, as well as Northern Ireland. It is a mild day, though, out there after a pretty mild start this morning as well. Now, that rain will gradually move eastwards throughout this evening, but it will linger for parts of Scotland through much of this evening. And once it does clear through, we will start to see much clearer skies move in through the second part of the night. And with that, temperatures will start to fall away. So we're down into mid-single figures across parts of western Northern Ireland to start this evening. Now, the rain may turn heavy across parts of Wales, southwest England, particularly over any high ground, but it will be a fairly short-lived spell of wet weather that we're expecting through this evening. It will push eastwards throughout the night, becoming a slightly weaker feature. So lots of cloud ahead of that, fairly dry across many southeastern areas, spell of wet weather for many central areas, and then clearer skies developing from the north and west, spreading into parts of West Wales as well as southwestern England. And here we could see a touch of frost by by Friday morning. So a dry and sunny start to the day for much of Northern Ireland, Scotland, western areas of England and Wales, but a thick blanket of cloud and some wet weather though persisting across the east throughout Friday morning. It may take a little while to clear, but the rain's not going to be particularly heavy, and once it does clear, that sunshine will become much more widespread, bringing many of us a fine end to the week, but it will feel a little bit fresher out there on Friday afternoon. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Horrendous number of sex offences in mixed changing rooms. We spoke to Sharon Davis about that this evening. The Australian ban on social media, complete ban for under 16s. They woke up yesterday, no access to social media. We're going to be talking to people in Australia about that, and also monitoring that situation with the Venezuelan oil tanker, which has been seized by America. I'm Bev Turner on The Late Show live tonight.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large.
So this is an evolving but breaking story. In the past few hours, America has seized a tanker off the coast of Venezuela, marking a further escalation in tension between the two countries, also tonight.
I can announce today that I have commissioned new research from UK Research and Innovation to rectify the unacceptable gaps in our understanding of perpetrators' backgrounds and motivations, including their ethnicity and religion.
Also breaking tonight, what I consider to be a bizarre admission from senior police chiefs who say they will never be able to 100% record the ethnicity of offenders. Also tonight.
We are so badly going in the wrong direction, and yet here we are bringing down barriers to safeguarding every single day.
Women and girls in Britain are being sexually assaulted and even raped in mixed changing rooms across the country. We're going to be cracking open tomorrow's front pages hours before the ink is dry. There's some fantastic front pages tonight. We'll be telling you all about it so you can talk about it all day tomorrow. We are live, of course, in Washington, DC, just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about and that matter to Britain too, including this.
We want safety, we want security, we want to make sure we're not letting the wrong people come.
How would you feel about coming to America if it meant that you had to show all your social media to the authorities in order to gain entry to the USA? Are you disappointed that President Trump is overseeing that? On a similar note,
we as a whole will have our constitutional right taken away from us. We won't be able to share our views or opinions, and we won't be able to hear others' views and opinions.
in a world first, Australia has enacted a social media ban for all users aged under 16. Won't they just find some way around it? I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Welcome to the second hour. We've got all the stories you're going to be talking about later today. More debates, zero ad breaks. Don't go anywhere. So let's return to tonight's breaking news at the top. The United States has intercepted and seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening.
Of course, President Trump just talking a few hours ago. It's the latest and most dramatic escalation yet from the White House, which has spent months tightening the screws on Nicolas Maduro, accusing the Venezuelan leader of running a state-backed narco-trafficking empire right under America's nose. It also comes just days after President Trump openly suggested that the US could take action on Venezuelan soil, but the Maduro regime insists this is all part of a US plot to topple him, accusing America of trying to engineer his removal. Well, with me now is former CIA operative and senior analyst for strategy at the Center for Security Policy. Very good evening to you, Michael Wooler. Thank you so much for joining me, Michael. So very dramatic pictures there of forces descending onto that boat. What's your analysis of this situation and how serious is this escalation?
Well, it's a very serious move. This vessel, currently called the Skipper, has been sanctioned before for sending oil to Hezbollah and to the Iranian regime and using false registrations and false flags and as part of a shadow fleet run by a Ukrainian national. So it's a big deal.
And so how unusual is this, Michael, to see America take this sort of action? And what will Maduro make of it tonight?
Well, it represents more than a day's output of Venezuelan oil production, and it just caused oil prices to shoot up and Venezuelan crude prices and the discounts to steepen because people want to take less of a chance getting Venezuelan crude. So it's really turning the screws on his regime, and it'll be deterring other customers of Venezuelan crude, illegal customers, of purchasing his oil. It could also hit the Cuban regime very hard too, because it's seen its oil. It produces none of its own oil, and it's seen its oil cut already about by a third this year, and it depends heavily on Venezuela. So this will have ramifications around the world.
And what happens now, Michael, if America has seized this boat? I mean, on a practical level, what does that mean?
Well, it was an illegal vessel, the equivalent of a pirate vessel. It was flying a flag of Guyana, but it was registered in Panama, and it was transponder was sending out false information about its location. So it's a Trump mentioned that the U.S. might keep that oil. So I think under international law, it's the United States' right to seize to keep what it just seized.
It's extraordinary. Now, it's not as though Venezuela has suddenly become problematic to America. Is it just that Biden wasn't interested in taking these sorts of steps? Why is Trump concerned with the country?
Well, Trump had the chance earlier in his first term to do it, and he didn't do it. And where you had the huge democracy movement under Guaido, where you had millions of people out in the streets, and that failed. Now the situation's gotten so much worse, and in between, the Maduro government has emptied his prisons into the United States and sent his gangs into the United States. So he mounted a real offensive operation against our own country. So Trump is saying this is not going to happen anymore. We have to restore order in our hemisphere. It also jibes with his new national security strategy that came out a couple of weeks ago, where he put the Western Hemisphere as the primary core vital interest of the United States.
The other question, I suppose, is this about regime change, Michael? And does America have a right to try and force such a change of leadership? We're looking at the pictures of Maduro here on the screen. Is that the kind of thing America should be doing?
Well, it's not a legitimate regime under the United States' eyes. It's a narco cartel that has taken control of our government. We have a history in our hemisphere of making sure that foreign, meaning external to the hemisphere, interests don't take control of governments in the hemisphere. And in this case, Maduro has obviously allowed foreign powers to have undue influence and control over his government or his activities. And he's certainly running offensive operations against his neighbor, Guyana. He's smuggling narcotics into the United States. It's not like rogue elements are doing it. It's the regime that's doing it. And anybody who empties his prisons of convicted felons and gang members deliberately to flood another country to spread crime and chaos, we have a right and a duty to respond to that.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you so much, Michael. Michael Waller there, former CIA operative and senior analyst for strategy at the Centre for Security Policy. So in other news this evening, a shocking report in the UK has found that women and girls across the country are being sexually assaulted in mixed-sex changing rooms. New police data reveals that at least 16 rapes, 80 sexual assaults and 65 acts of voyeurism were committed in sports centres in 2023. Many of these offences were reportedly in mixed-sex changing areas, with campaigners warning that these facilities are a magnet for sexual predators. Well, a little earlier, I caught up with former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davis to discuss this and also her nomination that we see today of her becoming a House of Lords peer. Here she is. Sharon Davis, great to see you. We're going to get on to your very good news in just a minute, but let's start with this awful news. These statistics, Sharon, from 2023, 146 sex crimes, 80 sexual assaults, 16 rapes, 65 incidents of voyeurism across leisure centres. Do you feel somewhat vindicated when you hear these statistics, given that you've been arguing for single-sex spaces for women now for a few years?
I mean, it's just basic common sense, isn't it? You know, if we know that the vast majority of sexual assaults are men on women, and so therefore, if you put women in a vulnerable position in a mixed-sex changing room, women are going to have more sexual abuse incidents. And I think also what's terribly sad is if you look back at the number of sexual assaults over the last 20 years, it's gone from 60,000 to 210,000. So we are so badly going in the wrong direction, and yet here we are bringing down barriers to safeguarding every single day. A lot of it is about money. It's cheaper to build a changing village than it is to build 2 separate changing rooms with 2 sets of showers, but only marginally. And I just think that the safeguarding and the risk assessments have been thrown out the window. I get heartbroken when we talk obviously about males in women's sport. There wasn't a single risk assessment done before women's sport was just thrown under the woke bus. And yet now we're talking about risk assessments to put it back to the fact that women can have fair and safe sport. None of it makes any sense. And I do feel like that women and girls have been very badly let down by successive governments, but particularly by this one, because the Supreme Court has now made it very clear. So they've got everything they need to turn around and, put better safeguards back into place again.
You and I grew up swimming, both of us. You did a bit better than me, but we spent a lot of our childhood in changing rooms, and it was very clear the girls went in the girls' changing rooms, the boys went in the boys' changing rooms. And I'm trying to remember when that changed. So my local swimming pool in Richmond upon Thames in Surrey, where I live at home in London, has the changing village. So we should probably just describe this to people, because they may not know, if they don't go to pools regularly, what that means. When did that change happen, Sharon? And what motivated it?
Predominantly probably money. Architects, deciding that they can design this in this particular way. They maybe only need to build 1 set of showers because everybody's in there together after they've come out of the pool. And again, it tends to be local authorities, less so if you go to a private club. So if you were going off to, David Lloyd's or Virgin's, they will still have the separate changing facilities. So it's often the councils which have made the wrong decisions here. It's the ignoring the statistics, which I find so heartbreaking. You kind of go, how much do we have to see? I mean, only this week, the number of young girls that have been raped just this week. How much are we supposed to tolerate, and how much are we supposed to see before we say enough is too much? And that's what I'm finding just so heartbreaking. And looking at the statistics that's come back for the Women's Rights Network, who've done this, brilliant report, what it shows is that women just remove themselves and young girls just stop going to the swimming pool. It's because we don't tend to shout about this. I do, because I'm very loud-mouthed, right? And I keep on shouting, and I will carry on shouting. But an awful lot of women just take themselves away. So these policies are not inclusive. They are excluding women and girls.
Now, your voice has not been absent. You were cancelled. You were cancelled completely. Just describe to us what you've been through to get to this journey.
So in 2015, the IOC decided to change the law to allow men to identify into women's sport. And I could see that the end result of this was going to be that there would be no women's sport left. And I was just so heartbroken, because obviously during the 70s and the 80s, when I was competing, we had the East Germans that were pumped full of testosterone and styranobol through no fault of their own. This was an East German regime that couldn't care less about these young girls. They just wanted them to win medals. And the IOC let it happen. And many of those young girls died. All of them have been sick. But 2 generations of young women lost out on their medals. And I just thought, I cannot watch this happen again and sleep at night. And I suppose I was, I'd earned enough money that, not all of my mortgage, because all of my mortgage is still not paid off, but a lot of my mortgage was paid off, and I thought I could take the hit. And I didn't think it would be as bad as it was. But for the first 5 years, the policy of Stonewall was no debate. We couldn't even get the science out. We couldn't even get organisations, mainstream media, to even talk about this. I mean, thank goodness for, yourselves and the Telegraph and, talk. There has been a few people out there that have just, without you, we'd have had nothing. And now we're being able to at least talk about it and get some sort of reason. But even now, we're still throwing most of women's sport under the bus. We're only protecting elite. There's still 34 sports here in the UK that do not protect grassroots. So where did the elite come from if they don't come from grassroots? And why is a woman worthy of supporting and giving her fair sport if she's good enough? But if she's not at the very top, then she's not worthy. I mean, that to me is ludicrous.
And what you've just done, Sharon, is what you always do, which is to talk about the issue. And I want to know about you. How has it been for you to get this notification that you've got a seat in the House of Lords? When did you find out? How did you find out? How long has it been in the planning? And how excited are you to get started?
So I got asked 6-7 months ago by Kemi Badenoch, and who I have great respect for. Kemi's been trying to do things for women for a very long time, often stopped, but always trying. And I do think she's a very genuine politician. But I had to sit on it, for absolutely ages. And after about 3 months, I said, oh, look, I've really got to tell my kids and my dad, because otherwise I'm going to burst. And my dad is quite old. He's 90 and he's still coaching swimming. And so they said, yes, just tell them that they can't tell everybody else. They have to keep it secret. So I told them, and then it went on and on and on, because the Labour Party obviously is being able to place an awful lot of peers, and I think they announced 25 today. There's a lot of hereditary peers that are going, so Labour are trying to fill the House of Lords with Labour peers, and so they had this huge swathe that had to go in front of the committees, and that of course delayed everything. So I only knew about 10 minutes before they were making the announcement today that they were actually going to make the announcements today. So yes, it's nice that it's not a secret. It's nice that Dad will be around to be able to see it all. The kids still think that I should be called Baroness Dogsbottom, which I've told them they cannot call me that. It's all a little bit surreal, to be honest with you.
What are you going to be?
Who knows? I can't be Baroness
What
just
are you
Sharon
going
Davis.
to be called?
I don't know, Hannah, I really don't, because I think you have to go in and basically talk about where you come from and where you're living now and what sort of titles are available and what you would like to be called, because there are, they can only have one Lord Davies or Baroness Davies, and I think there's already one of those. So it has to be of somewhere. So we'll have to find out about that and go through the whole formal thing. But I'm looking forward. I've got lots. You hit the nail on the head, Bev, when you said, I'm not just about feminism and women's rights. It's a big part of my life, but I'm also about trying to get kids into sport. We lose girls from sport now in this country at 11. We used to lose them at 14 and 15. 11, we're losing them. We've got to find ways to be able to engage our young girls, get them off their phones, get them resilient, get them physically happy, get them mentally happier. We've got to, maintain that. We've got to get women back into sport again. And then, of course, my mum died of Hep C as well. So, that is something else I feel very passionate about. 30,000 people died prematurely. So hopefully I'm not a one-trick pony. I've got lots of things that I want to try and do good things.
I applaud you enormously. It's so nice to talk to you. I'll see you soon.
And to you too. Take care.
Oh, isn't she fabulous? And of course, we've seen the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning for you there in the UK. Tomorrow is a big picture of Sharon Davis on the front, which she's got to come up with what her name is going to be. Niall Gardner, Baroness Butterfly, maybe.
That's a great title. And I have to say that my former boss, Margaret Thatcher, would have been really proud, I think, of Sharon Davis and the courage, the fortitude that she has demonstrated standing up to the woke mob. The hate-filled woke mob. This is a very brave and courageous lady, and I can't think of anyone who is more deserving of a peerage than her right now. So this is a wonderful wonderful announcement.
Well, she won her Olympic silver medal in the 80s, wasn't it? It was actually 400 IM, so she could be Baroness Backstroke, Butterfly or Breaststroke, of course, any of them. Well, the equivalent that you have here, Ashley, is Riley Gaines.
Yes,
very similar.
Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon, as Paula's actually a good friend of mine. But I love hearing her story, and she talks about how she's passionate not only about protecting girls, but also the impact and the positive impact sports can have on young girls. I personally had it on me in a lot of ways. I was able to obtain a scholarship, stay on the right track. So it was very impactful to hear, especially in the sport of swimming, something that's happening in the UK. She's obviously a huge voice, and I love to see it. Of course, we saw this play out in the US, and I think seeing it, what happens here, happens in the UK a lot of the time, and it's still happening. It's amazing to see that she has, been rewarded for the hardship she's gone through.
Yeah, and I'm sure Sharon would thank Riley Gaines for the efforts that she made in this country against Leah Thomas was the male turned female.
Yes, and Paula Scanlon also.
And Paula was the same, wasn't
she was at Penn with Leah Thomas. But I'd love to see a collab between the two of them.
I would.
Or all three of them at this point.
And it is funny that it's actually the swimmers. Maybe there's something about us gobby swimmers, Niall. Swimmers are tough, When you have to get in cold water at 6 o'clock every morning, it prepares you for a lot. After that, everything is kind of easy. But I think one of the most depressing things that Sharon said in that interview is the fact that we're now losing girls from sports at 11 years old, Ashley.
It's terrible. The fact that it's really because of the fact they don't want to go in these locker rooms, how can you blame them in so many ways? And, they don't want, you already have to deal with the politics of sports, between parents and coaches competing if you're good enough against girls, but now you have men coming into the sport that you have to deal with at this point. And so it's so discouraging as a former athlete to hear, just due to the opportunity that it allowed me, and I know it can allow so many other girls, and I think so many women have fought hard over the years,
It's hard enough to get young people to stick with sport these days as well, Niall, not least because of these mobile phones are much more enticing, as I say, than getting up and going swimming at 6 o'clock in the morning. Why would you do that? And in fact, we're going to be talking a little bit later about this phenomenal social media ban with the under-16s. And I mean, look at Australia. You think that is one country that likes to get kids out and about and doing sport. And you're a dad. I know you've got 3. And how easy has it been to keep them involved in sport?
Well, sport is vitally important for building character. And we'll have to see what happens in Australia with their ban. But sport is absolutely vital, I would say, for the future of Britain, Australia, and for the free world.
For the future of the generation. And you're going to the World Cup with your son, aren't you?
Yes.
You're not playing in it. He's not playing in it. But you're going to go and watch.
I'm afraid not.
Not this time. Just on this story, a Sport England spokesman has said violence against women and girls remains a deep-rooted societal issue, and these findings are very concerning. Our 2024 facilities guidance provides clear advice on delivering separate male and female provision. Good. Well, let's hope you get rid of those ridiculous changing villages and bring back separate changing rooms. Let me know your thoughts on that by becoming a friend of GB News. It's free and it only takes a moment.
Join the community and be part of our shows by becoming a friend of GB News. Get a direct line to join the conversations that you hear us talking about every day in our programmes by commenting on Your Say and voting in You Decide polls. Access opinion, analysis and behind-the-scenes videos as we share more from the stories that you see on TV and radio. Plus, watch our shows live and on catch-up anywhere, anytime. If you love our channel, become a friend of GB News for free by scanning the QR code or going to gbnews.com/friend. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be a part of them.
Thank you, Michelle Dewberry. Now, still to come on The Late Show Live tonight.
I think in the UK, we will inevitably get there eventually, just like it was inevitable we'd get there with banning smoking for children eventually.
Fascinating interview. That's a Labour MP who told me that he thinks social media will be banned in Britain for the under-16s. I'll find out how that ban is going down under. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. Don't go anywhere. So, new research reveals that children are spending an average of nearly 3 hours online every single day. Australia, though, has just introduced the first ban on social media for children under 16, which saw millions of children and teenagers lose access to their accounts overnight. Now, there are calls for the UK to adopt a similar ban, and I spoke to one of the Labour MPs supporting those calls, Fred Thomas. This is what he told me. Fred, first of all, thank you for the article that you wrote in The Telegraph today. I think it's fantastic, and it's an issue that is very close to my heart. I've got 2 teens, one who is no longer a teen, but the addiction to smartphones is a massive problem for every parent that I know. Why is it so important to you as an issue? How do you see this as being a problem?
I think we all know as a society that social media is causing harm to our young people. And we see that in various different ways. In astonishing stats now, the average 12-year-old in the UK, on average, will spend 29 hours a week on social media. That didn't used to happen at all. And that's changing people. And it's linked, of course, to a huge rise in people having anxiety, mental health problems, struggling to contribute at school, and then, of course, struggling to contribute later on when they become adults. And we all know this stuff is really bad for our young people. Everyone knows it. Even today, I noticed that the young people themselves know it. I had a school visiting Parliament from my patch in Plymouth, and I asked for a show of hands. Who here would support a ban on social media? More than half the hands went up. So the young people themselves can feel that this thing is happening that's bad to them, but if all your friends are on it, you've got no option. Teachers are aware of it. Parents, such as yourself, you've just mentioned, are aware of it. It's almost like smoking. We know it's bad. And it took us years to ban smoking when we knew it was bad, but we didn't have the data. But look, we know this stuff. It's common sense. Australia today have done it. They've banned social media for under 16s. I'm calling for the UK to do the same.
Are you conflicted at all, Fred, this idea of the degree to which the state should be interfering in family life? Because I am. It's something that I worry about immensely, that we're teaching a whole generation to always look to the government for what to do, how to solve their life, tell them what to do. But when it comes to this issue, I think we've been caught napping, and I think we've massively underestimated the harms, and I'm wondering why that is. What have been the powerful forces which have been exerted behind the scenes so that MPs who've come before you have not been aware of the dangers to kids?
Well, look, I think it's crept up on us as a society. And I know what you mean about not wanting the state to go too far, but we also want the state to support parents. And as you've just said, a parent yourself, it's difficult to help and control these things with your young people, and that's where the state needs to help. And really it's about making the tech companies accountable. So the way Australia are doing it is the onus is on the tech companies to make sure that these accounts don't belong to under 16s. It's not on the parents. So the parents aren't going to be penalized, the companies are going to be. And I think that's the way of doing it. It's about the state controlling commercial interests rather than putting the onus on parents.
Yeah, I do like the seatbelt analogy as well, because when my kids were little and they would try and wriggle out of their seatbelts, it was very powerful for me to say, if you don't put your seatbelt on and a police officer comes along the road, mummy's going to be in trouble with the police, and they would quickly put the seatbelt on. It was one of those areas of parenting where I actually quite liked having the weight of the law and the weight of the government behind me. When it comes to social media, I think the majority of parents are crying out for some sort of help, even those libertarians like myself who generally don't want the government to be deciding what I do and don't do behind closed doors. What chances do you think we have, though, Fred, of enacting such a ban on social media under 16s? What hills do you have to climb to make that happen?
Well, look, I think in the UK, we will inevitably get there eventually. Just like it was inevitable we'd get there with banning smoking for children eventually. It's a question of how long it takes, in my opinion. It might take a decade. It might take much less than that. I don't know. This Labour government are totally committed to online safety and have brought into force the Online Safety Act and are taking great steps to make people safer online. But that was a piece of 2023 legislation, and things move very, very quickly. So I'm talking to government, asking them to take more further steps in this space, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wish you all the best with it, and I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
So that's Labour MP Fred Thomas there. Let's talk now to Leonardo Puglisi, who is the founder of 6 News Australia. But Leonardo, that makes you sound like the kind of next Rupert Murdoch. So who are you really? Because you're not old enough to be the next Rupert Murdoch just yet, but you are an influencer. Tell us your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I founded 6 News when I was 11 years old. At that point, when I was a bit younger, obviously the accounts were parental supervised but not run by them, and I've always had an interest in news and in politics, and it's continued to where I am now. So we've been doing this for about 6-7 years. It's got a team of other small team of other young journalists, and yeah, it's a pretty unique thing here.
And so you must think this is a terrible idea then, because you were only 11 when you started your social media sites, delivering news to, I guess, the world, clearly, not just Australia. You wouldn't have been able to do that. There will not be another Leonardo Puglisi if this happens, is there? So presumably you think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm very critical of the social media ban. Obviously, it wouldn't have allowed 6 News to exist in the first place, but that's not really my main reason for opposing it. I think there's serious issues about having a blanket ban, the technology that's being used to enforce it, the lack of parental exemptions, and the impact on marginalised young people, which have all been problems in what's been really a bit of a confusing rollout here, with platforms kind of added and not added. You know, I don't take any hit from under 16s being banned. You know, I'm 2 years past that age anyway, but yeah, I am critical of the ban and its implementation.
How are they implementing it?
Yeah, so the initial thing we heard was Meta was going in early. They went in about a week early to start notifying these under 16 accounts and then removing them, I guess, forcibly. And there's been other platforms. I got a notification from Twitter today about age verification. Blue Sky has done it as well. And it supposedly will be kicking young people off if they can't prove it. The problem with that is it clearly hasn't worked so far. My younger brother is in that age group affected, and he wasn't even he didn't even attempt to bypass it. He just wasn't stopped from accessing it. That's the case of I would say probably thousands of young people across the country. There's been plenty of TikToks of 15-year-olds who say they absolutely can get past it. So there are definitely issues with the implementation of this, but as you said in the intro, right, the onus is on the platforms here officially to actually remove these accounts.
And how do you have to verify your age, Leonardo? Is it face scanning?
Yeah, depends on the platform, but I've seen 3 options at least. There's been face scanning, there's been handing over a form of ID, so there could be your passport, your Medicare card, and I've also seen on Blue Sky they're giving the option to put in a credit or a debit card to prove age as well. But ultimately, I think face scan is the one that has been the largest use, and again, that has had flaws. I've seen reports that people are bypassing it with the face of their dog, and it's just not working like that, which again is the problem with trying to keep young people off something that is pretty normal in this day and age for Generation Z and Generation Alpha. And by removing them, I think they're a lot more likely to keep trying to stay on there, and evidently that has been the case.
Unbelievable. Well, obviously terribly believable, actually, Leonardo. Leonardo Puglisi, what an inspiration you are, founder of 6 News Australia. Thank you so much for joining us on The Late Show Live. Let's talk to an Australian parenting expert now, Dr. Justin Coulso. Good evening to you, Dr. Coulso. Now, we all know as parents the harms of social media, but just remind us how problematic this is, and is it going to be a magic bullet for all those Australian children who are now going to be running around the beach and swimming in the sea rather than on tech?
Yeah, double-barreled question. Let's start with the first one first. Tech companies have never, over the last couple of decades of their existence, done anything in the best interests of our children. They don't plan on doing anything in the best interests of our children moving forward. Just recently, Meta, who owns Facebook and Instagram, among others, was found to have cancelled a study that was showing that when you deactivate your account within a week, there are well-being benefits. They stopped the study. This is not what they wanted to see happening, okay? Because for growth, they need shareholder value, and shareholder value demands addiction. And the best time to addict a child to social media or anything at all, really, is during that time where the brain is completely exploding, a whole lot of new neuronal connections, a whole lot of growth, a whole lot of things happening, somewhere around 11, 12, 13, 14. This is bad news for them. This is literally... Like you, I'm not really big on government interference. I think that we should be allowed to live our own lives the way that we want to. But we're talking about a vulnerable population here, children. And we have so many different laws in place across our society to protect vulnerable people. Children can't gamble. Children can't, well, apparently can't view pornography or go into casinos or establishments that are designated for adults for very clear reasons. Children can't drive, children can't drink alcohol, children can't buy tobacco, and the list goes on and on. Why? Because they're vulnerable, they're young, and they could end up in harm's way. Social media is another platform, another way that children can be harmed, and I think that it's entirely appropriate that the government enacts some form of legislation to, one, support parents who are struggling. 70+% of Australian parents are in favour of this legislation because they are so tired of asking their kids to get off social media, or they are so tired of seeing another story in the news where a child who has been on social media has been bullied or has taken their life because these platforms do not protect children. In spite of Leo's appropriate concerns, this is a good news day.
Okay, interesting. But does it mean that all adults will also have to declare their age, Justin? Is it just another means of control? Because once you're having to scan your face, it won't just be children. You'll all have to scan your face to use social media.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a parenting expert, so in terms of what that means from a conspiracy theory point of view and the government having access to everyone's digital IDs,
it's just...
I can't answer that question. I really focus on parenting.
Yeah.
What I do think, honestly, what I do think is that people who are focusing on that are focusing on the wrong thing. Yesterday I stood at Kirribilli House, the Prime Minister's residence, shoulder to shoulder with parents who have lost their children because of what happens on social media, children who have died by suicide, children who have been bullied to their deaths, children who have been sextorted by bad actors who have demanded explicit photos and then held those children to ransom, and they've literally taken their lives. People who are trying to come up with some civil libertarian argument for why this is a bad idea, I'm sorry, they've missed the memo, they're on the wrong page, they're barking up the wrong tree. We need to protect our kids.
Yeah. Okay, fascinating. Dr. Justin Colson there, Australian parenting expert. Really appreciate your time here this evening. I know that he is a kind of leading parenting expert in Australia, and it's so interesting, Niall. Just your perspective on this story. Is it, because I do worry about the civil liberties, but then we have absolutely let this pernicious force get into the hands of our children, and it's so damaging.
Yes, that's an excellent point. That was a very compelling interview
just
now by the parenting expert in Australia. And I think this ban certainly will significantly reduce the amount of cyberbullying and so on that takes place. It's a huge problem, I think, in schools and so on. So I think it's going to have a very positive effect on that side. At the same time, there's the issue of parental responsibility. And ultimately, of course, parents should have the key role in making these decisions. And I think that much of the world's going to be watching the Australian experiment to see how it works and whether it succeeds or not. Especially the United States, UK, for example, Western nations will be closely watching what's happening. So let's see how this unfolds.
What the benefits will be. I worry as much as anything, Ashley, about just the addiction that we create when children's brains are being trained to be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. You're super young. So how old were you when you got a mobile phone?
I believe my parents are divorced, so I think I was about 12 years old, but it was, not an iPhone at the time. But you're exactly right. And I believe Elon Musk said this, that, short form video is the thing that's, kind of killing our society in general, because it's what they're consuming. And so, with this ban, I think you're right, the parental aspect of this, the civil liberties aspect, it is an experiment. It's what's happening right now. We did bring up the factors of, in Leonardo did too in his interview, talking about, are kids going to be able to get this? But I think that is a parental responsibility aspect. Should kids have the phones or not? Do you have the time to monitor not only what's going on in their schools, but also what they're viewing, and who's actually the parent there, the phone, or what they're viewing, or the parents teaching the morals and responsibilities that they should at the time. And I go back to the idea that kids have to be 16 in the United States to get a driver's license to operate a motor vehicle, and there's all these things in place and standards in place, and should we be taking a look at that with the phones? It is an experiment. I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on it.
I can't imagine America doing this though. The tech bros are too powerful here.
Yes.
I don't think any president is going to stand up to the Elon Musk,
the constitutional argument in the tech bros.
Meta.
Yes.
Oh well, right. As you say, we will be watching Australia to see how this works out. They already beat us in every Olympic sport anyway. That's only going to carry on, isn't it? Right, back here in America, another tech story now. An alarming new app is making headlines across the country. It's called Wiz, and it's drawn widespread concern after allegations the platform is allowing minors to connect with sexual predators. So this app was planned for teenagers to make new friends. I mean, if that isn't enough, I don't know what is. Instead, it's being used as, quote, Tinder for kids. To unpack this, I'm joined by Lily Morrick, Communications and Campaign Specialist at the National Centre on Sexual Exploitation. And we should probably, Lily, for people who are watching this, who may not, there may be a slightly older generation who don't even know what Tinder is, can you just explain to our audience what we mean by that and why this is a Tinder for kids?
Absolutely. So Tinder essentially is an online dating platform. So you swipe right if you like someone to match with them and have a conversation. You swipe left if you don't like someone. And of course, the end goal is to meet up in person. And frequently it's used for hookups. Now, as you mentioned, Tinder is marketed as an app where kids can make new friends, which in itself is concerning because you're essentially encouraging children to connect with online strangers. But anyone who uses the app will be able to tell you that it's primarily being used as a dating platform. For example, they point you to your friend requests by saying, "See your secret admirers." So if that's no indication that it's a dating platform, I don't know what is.
And this is entirely legal, is it, Lily? And they've presumably got away with it by saying it's a bit like Facebook for kids, and it's just we're going to make friends on there. It all sounds so innocent. As usual, naive or twisted adults behind the scenes allowing this to happen.
Exactly. And I mean, really the difference, every social media platform poses dangers to children, so I don't want to let Facebook off the hook either. But at least Facebook, generally, we are sending friend requests to people we know, and we're communicating with people we know. But really, Wiz is designed to connect kids with strangers. And furthermore, they allow both kids or both teens and adults onto the app. And they claim that they separate the kids from the adults by robust age verification tools. But I personally have tested those tools, and 3 times, every single time I tested them, I was able to create an account as a 16-year-old, and I was put into a category where I was encouraged to date 15 to 17-year-olds. I'm almost 30 years old.
Wow. Oh, it's so dark. And what can parents do then, Lily? My teenagers have... we have to grant them permission before they upload any app at all. So myself and my partner will get a notification, Kiki wants to have a Uber or whatever it is, something that I don't mind them having for various logistical reasons, let's say. But is that what all parents should do? Is there anything else you can do?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, in this day and age, parents need to be very, very involved in monitoring their child's online activity. Yeah. However, I also don't want there to be any mistake about the fact that even the best parents, something very terrible can happen to their child, no matter what they do. We've worked with parents who they enabled every parental control. They monitor their child's activity very closely. And still, because these apps are designed in such unsafe ways, predators reach their child anyway. So I really do think that the accountability needs to be put on the tech platforms to design safe products if they're going to be releasing them to kids.
Yeah, fascinating, Lily. Thank you so much. Lily Morrick there, Communications and Campaign Specialist at the National Centre on Sexual Exploitation. GB News approached Wiz, but they are yet to respond. However, they have previously said our comprehensive safety system places us at the forefront of industry standards. At Wiz, the safety and well-being of our teen users is our highest priority. We used advanced AI moderation, trusted verification partners and continuous human oversight to create a space where teens can make friends safely. We regularly review and update our safeguards in collaboration with online safety experts and child protection organisations. Ashley, just before we move on, and we must move on, Wiz?
It's not for me, and I don't think it's anyone. Dating apps are going out, and neither should teens be on them in general, in my opinion. Yeah,
quite. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
There is a very close partnership between myself and the Prime Minister, and so we took him through all of these, all of the numbers and all of the options, and we decided it together as a team because that is what the Prime Minister and I am.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A dry day with sunny spells for many eastern areas. However, further west, rain will move in, and across the north, still another fairly breezy day, though not as windy as it was earlier on this week. So some cloud around across many eastern and northern areas, but there will be some sunny spells, particularly across eastern areas of England throughout this morning and into the afternoon. But further west, cloud will thicken after a fairly bright start. It's quite a brisk breeze as well, starting to pick pick up, and rain will push into parts of northwest Scotland, far west of Wales, southwestern England, as well as Northern Ireland. It is a mild day, though, out there after a pretty mild start this morning as well. Now, that rain will gradually move eastwards throughout this evening, but it will linger for parts of Scotland through much of this evening. And once it does clear through, we will start to see much clearer skies move in through the second part of the night. And with that, temperatures will start to fall away. So we're down into mid-single figures across parts of western Northern Ireland to start this evening. Now, the rain may turn heavy across parts of Wales, southwest England, particularly over any high ground, but it will be a fairly short-lived spell of wet weather that we're expecting through this evening. It will push eastwards throughout the night, becoming a slightly weaker feature. So lots of cloud ahead of that, fairly dry across many southeastern areas, spell of wet weather for many central areas, and then clearer skies developing from the north and west, spreading into parts of West Wales as well as southwestern England. And here we could see a touch of frost by Friday morning. So a dry and sunny start to the day for much of Northern Ireland, Scotland, western areas of England and Wales, but a thick blanket of cloud and some wet weather, though, persisting across the east throughout Friday morning. It may take a little while to clear, but the rain's not going to be particularly heavy. And once it does clear, that sunshine will become much more widespread, bringing many of us a fine end to the week. But it will feel a little bit fresher out there on Friday afternoon. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Oh, welcome back to the Late Show Live. We have got some good stuff to talk about between now and 2 a.m. Let's delve into the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers with GB News contributor Stephen Allen in London. My panel here, of course, former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, and from the Daily Caller, Ashley Brassfield. Right, folks, let's talk about this story about the Golden Globes. So the Golden Globes has revealed its nominees for a new category. It's podcasts, and it features many high-profile podcasters, including, brace yourselves, Stephen Allen, you'll never have heard of any of these, Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, Call Her Daddy, Good Hang with Amy Poehler, and one person who's missing, not just one, but the people who are missing off this are the biggest podcasts in the world. Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Theo Von, Russell Brand, none of them. No Megyn Kelly, no Ben Shapiro. What do we make of that, Steve? That has got to be political, because for anybody that doesn't know, they would be considered right-wing, whatever that even means in 2025.
Yeah, but I always say this when it's about award ceremonies. Just remember what it's about. It's about patting your friends on the back. The whole system is flawed. It's people, especially normally we presume it's like singers or actors. And what's happened there is you've won the lottery. You've got the best job ever. You're doing the thing you love. And they're so successful, they put together another ceremony to give them even more praise for doing the thing they love anyway. So don't be surprised. An award has never been about who does the best job. It's always about who's the most popular within the cool group. The trendy ones within a sector, so it's not surprising.
But actually what I find so fascinating is some of the people I've just named there, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Joe Rogan, Theo Von, these are the biggest podcasts in the world. They have more followers, more downloads, they make more money than any of these people. What is Call Her Daddy?
Call Her Daddy is a very sex-positive podcast, and it's Alex Cooper is the one that hosts this. She used to have the podcast with Barstool Sports, actually, but she's had to draw it back a little bit because she's actually gotten married, so she can't talk about her own sex life. So she brings others on to talk about their own sex lives, very scandalous in a lot of ways. But of course, you might remember her because this is the only podcast that Vice President Kamala Harris went on and did not go on Joe Rogan at the time. So if that kind of you want to key in on certain people of why they got on this list for the Golden Globes, that might be a key reason there.
But just to be clear, Kamala Harris didn't go on and talk about her sex life, presumably.
Not that time. I didn't hear much of that, but maybe that would have gotten her elected at this point. You never know. So.
I know that she tried everything else.
Yeah.
But Niall, I'm so baffled about the value system of these sorts of organisations, because to turn down people who predominantly talk about politics, like Tucker Carlson, and social issues like Megyn Kelly and politics, to have somebody that's on there talking about sex in a very graphic way, they seem to think that is more morally acceptable. What's happening now?
Yeah, it's very bizarre. So I think the Golden Globes is run by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and I think that, needless to say, the Golden Globes are very woke, really, and so they're not going to be nominating conservative podcasts. They're going to go for more liberal shows and so on, and so I think it's an example of the Hollywood mindset in place. The same, of course, for the for the Oscars with the whole sort of woke approach that's taken by the Academy there. The same goes for the Golden Globes, and it's all very, very sad to see, but it's the reality, of course, of Hollywood. I think the American people, of course, vote with their feet, for example, with the kinds of films they want to see. Top Gun Maverick, for example, was a massive success, a very patriotic, conservative film. They want to see more patriotism, more conservative-oriented, product in Hollywood. But of course, the Hollywood elites are living in a parallel Twilight Zone universe, right?
And actually, the complete exclusion of these podcasters just tells us everything we need to know. I mean, there was a conversation just recently between Russell Brand and Candace Owens about how Hollywood is basically, they were speculating, run by the paedophile elites. So no wonder they don't want to nominate them for an award. They could not be more different in terms of how they view the world. I know which bunch of people I want to listen to. Although I have to say, Niall is rapidly uploading "Call Me Daddy" onto his phone. I'm joking, Niall. I'm winding you up. It's not.
If the Golden Globes want to do the right thing here, they can bring back Ricky Gervais to host the show like they did before. I think Americans and the UK can agree with that.
Absolutely. I think Ricky Gervais was a real breath of fresh air.
Fabulous, wasn't it?
For the Golden Globes.
They'd never do that now, would they? They'd never do that now.
They couldn't tolerate. So.
No. Steve, let me just ask you about this story from the Inside Papers. People are going to be talking about this tomorrow. This is a new proposal that could see GCSE and A-level exams held purely on screens. No more pen and paper, Steve Allen. Kids type everything. Why would they need to write with a pen? Is that just moving with the times?
Do you know what? It probably is, but I'm so old that I think it's a terrible step forwards. Because then it makes it risky, doesn't it? If something crashes, something gets hacked, you don't know what could go wrong with the system. Whereas the good old-fashioned way of, like, here's a piece of paper, write it down, then you knew where you stood. But I suppose processing gets quicker. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I don't write anymore. I'm technically a writer. I suppose, some of my mortgage is paid by writing jokes for people, and I've not held a pen to do it for decades now, and it's terrible. In fact, once recently, I had to write out some stand-up because I didn't have any other tech with me. The hand cramp I got from just doing a little bit of writing because I'm so used to this and I'm not used to this. It's terrible.
Yeah, but there's evidence now actually to show that the cognitive process of actually imprinting a word with a pen on the page will imprint that material into your head. I always have a pen in my hand whenever I'm working because I still want to, it goes in my head. But as I say, Ashley, you're younger, you're this generation. Did you do your exams on computer? Do you wish you had?
We did do some on computer. We also did some on paper. We had Scantron, so you fill in the little bubble. Pretty simplified there. The major hand cramps there as well. But I think the New York Times today was saying certain fonts of writing like sans serif types on the computer are more conservative and leaning. So what can you do? Maybe you just have to do handwriting now instead of leaning to the left or right. With what you're picking for your typing.
And Niall, I don't know how you would be. You'd have to. Surely all the children would have to be given certain types of laptops, which could only be effectively word processors, typewriters. Maybe that's the solution, because otherwise they can be Googling answers, looking at AI. How do you get around that with a laptop, Niall?
Yeah, in the old days, we used to actually write essays on paper and read books, and I think that actually is a better way of doing things, really. And at the end of the day, I think that modern technology gets in the way of quality, really.
Yeah, I know. I think it's. I don't know. I'm not sure we think these things through, Steve. And I do wonder whether there'll be a whole turn of, my younger generation, my 14-year-old, when they go out for lunch or they're with their friends, they go and get a sandwich. They put their phones in the middle of the table because they are rejecting technology because basically they're seeing the likes of me, mothers and grandmothers, on their phones too much. Do you think the wheel will turn?
Well, maybe there's part of it, there's a pendulum that swings, but also there's this slow progression. I said I do a lot of typing. I literally type, on a keyboard. That's quite old school. Young people these days, just 2 thumbs. I don't know why they have all the rest of the fingers. They don't need them. They just need those 2, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Well, I'm a swiper. I do swipe text. I can't do that, so I'm a swiper. But that's for another day, Steve. Steve and Alan, thank you so much. Niall Gardner, Ashley Brassfield, and thank you at home for joining me this evening. I'll be back on The Late Show live tomorrow night, 7 p.m. here in DC, midnight at home. Sleep well.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A dry day with sunny spells for many eastern areas. However, further west, rain will move in, and across the north, still another fairly breezy day, though not as windy as it was earlier on this week. So some cloud around across many eastern and northern areas, but there will be some sunny spells, particularly across eastern areas of England throughout this morning and into the afternoon. But further west, cloud will thicken after a fairly bright start. It's quite a brisk breeze as well, starting to pick up, and rain will push into parts of northwest Scotland, far west of Wales, southwestern England, as well as Northern Ireland. It is a mild day though out there after a pretty mild start this morning as well. Now that rain will gradually move eastwards throughout this evening, but it will linger for parts of Scotland through much of this evening, and once it does clear through, we will start to see much clearer skies move in through the second part of the night, and with that temperatures will start to fall away, so we're down into mid-single figures across parts of western Northern Ireland to start this evening. Now the rain may turn heavy across parts of Wales, southwest England, particularly over any high ground, but it will be a fairly short-lived spell of wet weather that we're expecting through this evening. It will push eastwards throughout the night, becoming a slightly weaker feature. So lots of cloud ahead of that, fairly dry across many southeastern areas, spell of wet weather for many central areas, and then clearer skies developing from the north and west, spreading into parts of West Wales as well as southwestern England. And here we could see a touch of frost by Friday morning. So a dry and sunny start to the day for much of Northern Ireland, Scotland, western areas of England and Wales, but a thick blanket of cloud and some wet weather though persisting across the east throughout Friday morning. It may take a little while to clear, but the rain's not going to be particularly heavy, and once it does clear, that sunshine will become much more widespread, bringing many of us a fine end to the week, but it will feel a little bit fresher out there on Friday afternoon. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Donald Trump's National Security Review concludes that Europe is decaying and on the verge of civilizational erasure due to immigration. These are incredibly strong words from an American president. We debate tonight, is he right? Plus, David Lammy goes to Strasbourg. Apparently, the Brits are going to lead the charge to reform the ECHR so that we can deport those who ought not to be in our country. We'll have an update as to how that's going. And we learn that the 43 police forces in England and Wales will now be merged down into 12 police forces. This from a government that talks endlessly about devolution. Scratching your head? Yes, so am I. That and much more after the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Nigel. Very good evening to you, I should say. It's 7 o'clock here in the GB newsroom. Next week's planned strike by resident doctors may be averted after a new offer from the government. If union members support it, the 5 days of industrial action due to begin on the 17th of December could be called off. The offer addresses concerns over training places and covers extra expenses like exam fees, but does not promise any extra pay. However, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has appealed for the deal to be accepted.
If they vote, as doctors vote to end next week's strikes, we will move forward with that immediately in the new year. We can draw a line under the strikes, we can end the disruption, we can rebuild our relationship with doctors as we rebuild the NHS.
European countries, including the UK, have agreed to take a new approach to the continent's human rights treaty, the ECHR, in an effort to tackle illegal migration. Ministers of the 46 member states will now work towards adopting a political declaration at a summit next May, which will make it easier to deport illegal migrants. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer called for changes to how the treaty works in practice and how it's interpreted by British courts. Residents of a town in East Sussex have applied for a judicial review against the Home Office decision to house asylum seekers at a nearby army base. The government's plan to move around 500 migrants out of hotels and into Crowborough training camp has already faced local resistance. A spokesperson from the town's community interest group says residents have been denied the opportunity to understand, scrutinise or challenge the decision-making process, which they say is guaranteed by the ECHR. European leaders have spoken to President Trump to discuss the situation in Ukraine. The Prime Minister, along with the leaders of France and Germany, discussed the state of talks, agreeing intense work on the peace plan is to continue over the coming days. Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed Ukraine's finalising a 20-point document, which will be presented to the US in the near future. A man's been convicted of murdering a woman and her 3 children in a house fire in Bradford. Shiraz Ali killed Bryony Gawith and her children Dennisty, Oscar and Aubrey in a revenge attack when Bryony's sister Antonia ended their relationship. Prosecutors said Ali, who used petrol to set the home alight in August last year, was motivated by jealousy and fuelled by drink and drugs. His accomplice Callum Sunderland was found guilty of 4 counts of manslaughter. Tributes have been paid to Lance Corporal George Hooley, who was killed while on duty in Ukraine yesterday. The 28-year-old sustained fatal injuries in a tragic accident away from the front lines while observing Ukrainian forces testing a new defensive capability. Defence Secretary John Healey said George was an exceptional soldier with exceptional attitude and ability. His company commander in the Parachute Regiment described him as a model of professionalism, saying George didn't just do the job, he excelled at it. And those are your headlines. I'll be back with more at 8 o'clock.
The American administration a few days ago launched their National Security Review, and what it has to say about Europe is absolutely fascinating. Listen to this clip from Donald Trump being interviewed in the last 24 hours by Politico.
Most European nations, they're decaying. They're decaying. I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do. Europe doesn't know what to do. Their immigration policy is a disaster. What they're doing with immigration is a disaster.
Now, there was huge criticism today in the House of Commons of that interview, of that review. It seemed that what Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, was saying was, we want America to be here to defend us, but how dare they make any comment on how we operate our business, which I found slightly odd. But back to the main theme. What Trump is saying, what the American administration is saying, is that mass migration is leading to the potential of civilizational erasure. Now, these are very, very strong words. But on the broader theme of is Europe decaying, I want to get your thoughts on it. Tweet hashtag Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com, because I think he does have a point. Now, I'm very pleased, honoured, to be joined down the line by Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to President Trump and Director for Counterterrorism, and an old, well, not that old, but a friend of mine for many, many years. Seb, welcome to the programme. Start with this. Why is Donald Trump, why are America so concerned about what's happening in Europe, although he did single out Poland and Hungary, of course, from which your family come from, as doing a good job? Why does America care about what's happening in society across Britain and Europe?
Because everyone should. I feel rather strange. It's to be interviewed by the man who has fought so valiantly for the rebirth of Europe in terms of nation states and sovereignty. Without you, Nigel, there is no Brexit. Without you, Nigel, you know, this whole rebirth of national sovereignty on the continent wouldn't really have happened. So God bless you, Nigel. You know exactly why. The president, even this document that we just released on Friday that sets the scene for America for the next 3 or more years is very clear. We have a connection to the continent. The president has familial roots to the UK and to the continent, and we are concerned for civilizational reasons. Western civilization is the greatest civilization the world has ever seen, and it is experiencing a rebirth in America under MAGA, under Make America First Again. But what's happening in Europe, with your exception, as you mentioned, what the president listed in certain countries who get it, like Poland or Hungary, but elsewhere, whether it's illegal migration not taken seriously, whether it's the population decline and the lack of a capacity to meet 2.1 birth replacement rates, or whether it's the insane political correctness that puts people in prison for tweets and Facebook posts. Nigel, you know better than anyone why we here in America are concerned for our shared civilization.
Seb, I know it all too well, but I wanted to hear it from you. Now, the one other part of this that is leading to big debate, and this has been going on ever since 2016, November 16, since Trump first got elected, is the narrative here has been Trump wants to walk away from NATO and say, the hell with what's going on in Europe. And people look at this document and say, well, you know, it's perhaps a bit kinder to Russia than it ought to be. I've always taken the view that actually of many of the senior Republicans, Trump was the one that cared most about American leadership at NATO. But I mean, is America, well, firstly, about to walk away from NATO? And secondly, is an American negotiated peace in Ukraine now for the birds?
So, look, let's be very clear here. I cut my teeth on NATO issues back in the early 1990s. Back then, we suffered as an alliance from the free rider complex. America paid the bills for practically everyone. We dreamt of nations, meaning 2% of GDP, committed to their defense. So we could actually have an Article 5 that meant something, where there would be expeditionary forces, capable forces amongst all the NATO nations, not just those with a storied history of great military successes like the UK, France, or others. But what happened? Disaster. The people thinking that they can choose the welfare state and buy butter, whilst the US would buy the guns and protect you all. So no, what the president achieved just this year, that we see 5% dedication of GDP to defense inside NATO nations, is because he cares, is because he wants Europe to be as strong as we are, or get close to the same category. And when it comes to the future of Europe, who was it who in the UN 6 years ago, when he gave a speech, told the Europeans, stop buying Russian petrol and gas? Do you remember that moment, Nigel, when the president warned Europe? The camera panned to the German delegation, who were tittering, who were laughing. The American president says we rely too much on Russian gas. Well, they're not tittering anymore, are they, Nigel?
They're not tittering anymore. Final quick thought. Is any sensible, sane, negotiated peace with President Putin now even possible?
Oh, absolutely. There's only, let's do the math, do the mathematics of it all. We've been in office since January 20th. The president, not us, the president, with his incredible team, with Steve Witkoff, with Jared Kushner, with Marco Rubio, my immediate boss, have delivered 8 peace treaties for intractable things like Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. There is only one person who will deliver peace in Europe and a negotiated settlement to the meat grinder that is the war in Ukraine, and it is the man in the Oval Office just behind me. Anyone who lives in the real world knows that, and we are closer than we have ever been. So pray for the president and for his team, because we have a shot to bring peace to the continent.
I will. Seb, thank you so much for sparing some time to come and talk to us here on GB News. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you. Well, I'm joined in the studio by Kwasi Kwarteng and John McTernan, regulars on this show. Well, one thing for certain is that Trump has a very loyal team around him.
He's got a very loyal team.
There's a lot to unpack here, John, a lot to unpack. These words are incredibly strong. To say that Europe is at risk of civilizational erasure, remarkably strong words, but he does have a point.
Well, it's utterly wrong to say that. And he's talking about, he picks out countries in Europe which have a lower level of migration than the United States. Is the United States facing civilizational erasure?
No, because people go to America, become American, fly the flag, are proud to stand, put their hands on their hearts and do the oath. And the point he's making is that we've let people in vast numbers who don't integrate.
We're sitting on a panel with a very senior politician with a heritage from outside.
That's true.
And the leader of the opposition.
That's all very true. But we're not focusing on migration that happened in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s.
Net 30,000 a year.
Yeah. In 1987, the net was 8,000. For a long period in the 80s. So we're looking at a period over the last 10, 15 years where there's been huge numbers of immigration. You've also got something that we didn't have in the 20th century, which is, after 9/11, militant Islamic jihadism and political Islam, if I can call it that. And these currents, if you like, I don't think they pose a civilizational threat. I don't think that in the next week we're going to suddenly see the jihadist flag.
No one's suggesting in the next week. What Trump said was in the decades to come.
So I think we have to tighten the policy. I think we have to tighten migration. We've got to try and do more to integrate. Because the whole point about Britain was that you could come here and essentially just live your own life.
Yeah, Kwasi's come back at what you said quite effectively, because the numbers have been just beyond belief.
The issue, there's the hierarchy of issues, aren't there?
Yeah.
One is there burden sharing? We share the development of the deterrent with the United States of America. Massive burden sharing there. Is there burden sharing? Every European country that has large US bases on it is offering a prize to the United States of America to allow it to project its force forward in a way that if there was not NATO, if there were not the cooperation...
You're moving on to the second point, and fair enough.
But I'll go back to, at the core of it, there's a longer document we know now, that's an internal document, and it proposes the creation of a thing called the C5. The US, China, India, Russia back. No European nation there, no European Union representation. There's a at the core of the American proposition is a mercantilist one. It is the European Union is large enough as an economic state to stand up to America and say, some things we regulate on like GDPR, some things we regulate on in other areas on social media. You have to obey our laws. We're big enough. We're a big enough market. And this splintering of the European Union is designed to splinter a market as well.
But John,
and the US and Russia, the idea there's a forum for the US and Russia together, while the Russia is invading Ukraine, invading a European
and
sovereign
Donald
country.
Trump wants this, and Donald Trump's trying to broker a peace deal.
He's got two problems with it, hasn't he? The major one being Putin's not interested in a
I know. I agree with you.
You can't do it. You can't have.
And I asked Seb Gorka that, and I agree with you.
No, and I think Seb elegantly avoided answering your question, which was a good question.
But on the economics, I mean, America's relative to the Eurozone doubled in the last 16 years. But I tell you what, this is a massive debate and it'll go on forever. But I want to do something a little bit lighter. Okay. This is what Donald Trump had to say about the Mayor of London, Steve Carr. We've got to show this. Come on.
So if you take a look at London, you have a mayor named Khan. He's a horrible mayor. He's an incompetent mayor, but he's a horrible, vicious, disgusting mayor. I think he's done a terrible job. London's a different place.
It sounds like a it's play school.
Well, there's that expression, isn't there, that people say, I think Sadiq is living rent-free in Donald Trump's
house. That's
and
true.
He's obsessed with the Sadiq.
Sadiq will be going, that clip is my re-election campaign.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the guy is the mayor of London, and you've got the President of the United States. I mean, can you imagine George Bush going on after Ken Livingston or whatever it was?
The most interesting mayoral thing, in fact, yesterday was that Miami has got its first Democrat mayor for 30 years. It was elected, and a non-Cuban American.
Sure.
Mayor.
Well, that's not a huge surprise. But let me put a point. Let me put a point to both of you for a quick response. OK, he loathes Khan.
Yes.
Yeah. He makes it clear. It's actually quite entertaining to watch it in some ways. And Khan always returns the compliment.
Yeah,
so it works both ways. But a serious point. Trump says London is not what it used to be. And I'm going to put it to you, John, and to you, Kwasi, for a quick response. We're now living in a London where men can't wear watches, where women don't walk down the King's Road wearing jewellery, where mobile phone theft is 1 every 6 minutes stolen in London, where law and order is out of control, and there are many people who say London is not recognisable from just 10 years ago.
We live in London, which has got the Elizabeth line, which has got the busiest stations in the country.
But you can't wear a watch.
It's a London that's modernised. It's a London that is thriving.
A London where you can shoplift.
Thriving. A thriving London.
John, you've got your head in the sand here, mate.
Yeah, I think so.
There's an issue with the policing of shoplifting and the response and the use. We need far greater use. Visual recognition, cameras.
Big Brother will solve it all.
I do think that
Big Brother will solve it all.
It's very interesting listening to John, because if you listen to him, you would think nothing was wrong. Nothing. You don't accept that anything has gone wrong in the last 20 years. I was in the government for a lot of that time, and I'm putting my hand up and saying some things have got out of control, and we've got to try and reassert control.
Well, chaps, I tell you what, I am absolutely certain that London is not what it used to be. And I met a chap the other week who I know well, Italian, great guy.